Hi, and welcome to another episode of Feature Fridays. And today I'm joined again by Jörg and Data. So, Jörg, do you want to give yourself an introduction?
Yeah, hi, my name is Jörg Lev. I'm based out of Germany and I work as a technical product manager for VMware.
Thanks, Jörg. And Data?
Hi, I am Datta. I am the product manager for Tenant App. I work out of Bangalore and focus mostly on the Tenant App as well as the costing related features of VROps.
Excellent. Thanks, Data. And my name, for those who don't know me, is Guy Bartram. I'm the product marketing director for the Cloud Director suite of products. And today we're going to be talking about Tenant App some more. Tenant App is a very nice little feature that plugs into the Cloud Director framework and provides some great visibility on reporting on metrics and billing. And today we're going to sort of discuss a little bit more about the Tenant App dashboards in particular and how these are offered, what type of views they provide, how they can be constrained to viewing particular metrics or particular dashboards for particular tenants, and we'll go into some more detail around the access management controls there are, as well as what other options are available to providers and tenants. So, Jörg, do you want to just take us through a kind of a high level about the dashboards themselves and what's available to a provider and what's available to a tenant?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. For that, well, let's start directly with the access to the demo environment. So let me share my screen here.
Okay, we got it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so we can see that I'm currently logged into the Tenant App as a provider administrator. So that's the view for the provider administrator to use the Tenant App to see the dashboards for their day-to-day operations. We already talked about a lot of the settings that we can see in the metering and chargeback configuration. And yeah, we will talk about a bit more details about the access management today. Again, this is the provider view. We will see later how we can publish some of that information as a provider into the tenant portal of Cloud Director so that tenants can self-service consume these dashboards and even some advanced metrics directly in the Cloud Director portal in their tenant portal. However, you as a provider have the choice to select pretty detailed what information the tenant should see, and we will discuss later how this makes sense depending on your business model and the way you want to show or explicitly hide some information from the tenants. But let's have a look at the overview. So the information that we can see here in these different dashboards that we can select as a provider administrator, all these dashboards come obviously from vRealize operations, but they are built in a way that they use the VCD management pack that we have for vRealize operations. So they structure the information based on the tenant structure and your organization structure and the entities that we have in Cloud Director. So we can see an overview of all the different organizations that we have, and we can see, for example, different provider org VDCs that are configured and defined in Cloud Director as a provider, and I can go down, well, for the provider overview, see the different organization, see the list of organizations, how much stuff that they are running in there, and so on, and go even down into the selection for individual VApps that are running in the environment, and down to a list of virtual machines that are running in the environment.
And obviously from a provider perspective, when you're looking at the virtual machines and VApps, this is going to be across all the organizations in your environment.
Exactly, yeah. Because that's the goal, to have that view from a provider perspective to see everything that's running in your cloud offering.
Okay. So what does it look like from a tenant's perspective then?
So the tenant view that you can define as a provider to publish some of these dashboards into the tenant view obviously takes care and recognizes the tenant constructs that we have in Cloud Director. So I'm switching over to a different browser here. And we can see here, I am logged in now as an organization admin into the tenant portal of Cloud Director. And in there, you can see, well, I have my T1 organization and 3 org VDCs that are running in there, which are accessing or which are running some workloads. And we can access the tenant app information through the More menu, and then in Operations Manager, there's some single sign-on configured, and we can see here, we go into the access settings later in detail, but we can see here, we also have as a tenant view some dashboards for the organization VDCs and the VApps and the VMs. However, this of course is now limited to just the objects that run in my organization. So just the objects, the VMs, the workloads, the org VDCs that are allocated to my tenant here.
So to be clear, vRealize Operations then is behind this, gathering all of the metrics from the various components in the organization. vRealize Operations is not multi-tenanted, and what's happening here is the plugin for the tenant app is enabling a tenant to see specific metrics. So it is actually just pulling out the tenant-centric metrics. So this is a way a provider can be offering dashboards, reporting capability, static dashboards because they are static, to a tenant without them having to go to vRealize Operations. So they'll be able to provide multi-tenanted reporting dashboards as a service to complement their other services. Is that a fair assumption, Jörg?
Yeah, this is correct. So vRealize Operations and the background collects the data that we have from vCenter and from Cloud Director, and then we use, or you use and install the Cloud Director management pack for vRealize Operations to make VROps aware of all the tenant structures and all these different entities with the org VDCs, VApps, VMs, and so on, and their relationships. And VROps typically is installed well in the management network and the provider network, and the tenant app gathers the information, gets the information for these dashboards from VROps, and then builds this tenanted view that you can then publish into the tenant portal of Cloud Director.
And all of this
one
in license.
point here.
Sorry, Dada, go ahead.
Sorry, I would like to make one mention here. Like you rightly noted, these are static dashboards. These are dashboards that are pre-cooked into the system, right? We have many providers asking us, can I customize these dashboards? Can I create my own dashboards and expose to the tenants as well? Now that's an upcoming feature in Tenant App. Right now in this instance, while you see static dashboards only, soon you will have ability to create your own dashboards and expose to tenants. That way, completing your offering dashboards as a service.
Yeah, I can see that be a very valuable addition to this. But just so everyone's clear who are watching this video, from a licensing perspective, then the use of Tenant App or vRealize Operations to monitor Cloud Director objects is a free, inclusive capability in the Flex Core.
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Good. So just want to make sure. So providers who've got VCD today, if they're not using Tenant App, they can deploy vRealize Operations, deploy the plugins that you've said, and they can provide reporting dashboards then to their tenants if they wish.
Exactly. Yeah. And all the things that we show right now I'm back in the provider portal with the dashboards. That comes with that functionality and the publishing into the Cloud Director tenant portal as well. So even with the license that comes with the Flex Core licensing allows you to use vRealize Operations as a provider for your day-to-day operations, because you can use these dashboards and the predefined alerts and the predefined dashboards here to already simplify your life as a provider, because you get a pretty good overview about the capacity, the utilization of the different provider VDCs. You get a nice overview of all the virtual machines that are running, of all the VApps that are running. All that already helps you as a provider for your day-to-day operations, and it already allows you, of course, to publish some of these information in the tenanted way into the tenant portal, so you can even provide some value add to your tenants with the the vRops chargeback license that comes with the FlexCore.
Got it. Okay, so how would you then, we said the dashboards are static, but I understand you can choose which tenants can see which dashboards.
So, well, just to be clear, the dashboards obviously use the real-time data that it gets from vRops, the definition of the dashboard. So which information is shown in which way, that is statically predefined in vRops and comes technically with the management pack. Now, as a provider, you can use the access management setting in the administration section of the Tenant app to define in a very fine-grained level which information and from vRops and the Tenant app you want to publish into the tenant portal. So first of all, there is some sort of a global setting where you can define which of your organization, so which tenants should even have access at all to the Tenant app portal. So that allows or enables or disables the access in the tenant portal just to get the view of the vRealize operations tenant app in the tenant portal.
So they wouldn't even see it in the drop-down, right? Is that correct? They wouldn't even see it in the drop-down list of additional.
I think currently they will see it, but we'll get an sort of a not available.
Okay.
When they click there. But you can, in the Cloud Director setting, you can, since the Tenant app is technically a plugin for Cloud Director, you can just disable that plugin for the tenants that you don't want to publish these as well with the access management settings here to hide it completely from the tenant. Okay. In addition to that global access for tenants to the Tenant app, you can get into the Manage Pages where you can now define the different sections that we see in the dashboards and the alerts and the bills. So these pages that the Tenant app provides can be selected, which one you want to publish to the tenant. So in the standard setting is to enable all, so the tenants can see the different dashboards that are mentioned here with the org, VDCs, VApps, VMs, and so on. We have the metric selector, which we will have a look at in a few minutes in detail. We have the alert section and the build section. So that's all the functionality of Tenant app that you can publish into the tenant portal. However, you can deselect the things that you don't want to publish to the tenant. And very often, for examples, we have providers that use the Tenant app for metering and chargeback, but the actual billing is done in some sort of downstream backend system. So they don't want to publish the bills to the tenant portal, and then you can just deselect it here and just hide the build section from the tenant portal.
So just so I'm confirming, well, are we looking at access management now for a specific tenant or globally for these pages?
So these settings are globally.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
And also the alert section, I can imagine service providers would, want to give customers some visibility on alerts, but perhaps not some alerts. Is there a way of conditioning there you go, the list of alerts? Okay.
Yeah, so that is something where, again, it depends on sort of your business model as a provider, where for some of the models would allow you or would you want to publish these alerts into the tenant to make them aware and give them an idea what's happening in the environment. But in a lot of cases, these alerts are really specific for providers. And then in this case, you would rather want to hide the alerts.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So today it is all or none. So you either expose all the alerts on the org VDCs, or you do not expose alerts. But there is an item in our backlog to make it more granular. Just like you choose, Yorick will come to that on. You can specifically choose which are the metrics you want to expose to your tenants. Similarly, there is a backlog item which says provider should be able to choose which are the alerts that he wants to expose to his tenants and which not.
Yeah, I think that's important, particularly if you start looking at things like SLAs and SLA breaches. You know, there may be more complicated calculations behind what is actually going on rather than the alert that you see, which may cause a customer to pick up the phone.
Yep, makes sense.
You don't want customers picking up the phone before you've actually registered there's a problem.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And then there are also, of course, well, when you run a Cloud Director environment and run your tenants' workloads, again, vRops collects all the metrics that are available in vRops from vCenter and from Cloud Director. So it has access typically to things like, for example, CPU utilization of a single virtual machine, which is something that is rather sort of belongs to the tenant self-service capabilities as a provider. I don't really care that much how much utilization a virtual machine has. Well, the more the better typically, but if there's some, I don't know, some application that is very behaving very badly and consuming a lot of CPU cycles in that virtual machine, that is something that would rather be interesting for the tenant to see. While if we look at something like the CPU utilization on the ESX host, that's something, well, that's in the provider area and rather in the provider responsibilities to have a look at and to make sure that the things are working perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the manage pages. Then you've also got a tab called manage metrics. Then.
Yeah, that's a perfect segue to that. So with the metrics, let's just have a look at the view that's or the dashboard that's impacting, or these settings are impacting. So we have these in the dashboards, the metric selector. With that, that is a very sort of powerful view that allows you to consume deep down individual metrics from the different entities like organizations, VApps, virtual machines for a certain time range. And these metrics are, well, all the metrics that are available in vRops, that vRops collects from vCenter, from NSX, from Cloud Director, and so on. So they are very fine-grained, and it's a huge list of possible metrics that you can see. And we just saw, I'm just switching over to the tenant view again. If you enable that for the tenant, then of course the tenant can also have this metric selector view, of course limited to just the objects that belongs to him, so all the virtual machines, VMs, org VDCs and stuff like that for that tenant, but still down to the individual metrics. And this is something where you, as a provider, well, get a lot of information from, or can get a lot of information from, and some of that, these details you might want to have the tenant access to, some of them you might not want to have access to. Let's have a look into one of the virtual machines just to see, yeah, what we're running here. I'm going to filter that since we see you have 82 resources. So it's a lot of different things that we have here. So I'm just filtering down to, let's say, one cluster here, or one VApp here, and we have the individual virtual machines. So to select here just one of the VMs, and then you can see here down in the list that yeah, these metrics get very, very fine-grained and detailed. So you have metrics for the different resources, CPU, memory, disk, network, even VMware tools are installed, guest file system, things like that, network metrics, and so on, and a lot of other yeah, properties here that you could have access. And the way you use these information is, for example, just let's see, for CPU utilization, where you get all the percentage, the actual absolute values and things like that, really down to the individual metrics that vRops collects from vCenter. So if we have a look at the usage average, And then you can see, select all the time frame here. Let me just select, let's say the last week, something like that. You can see these metrics or the details in a very fine-grained way. Of course, well, that's a very powerful view, which gives you a lot of insight in the whole management stack where the virtual machine is running from an ESX host, managed by vCenter, all managed by Cloud Director on top of that. But that also means that you need to know how to read these different metrics, and even you need to know what they mean, and sort of what these settings are, what resources they reflect, and then how to read them correctly. So they are only useful for people who have the skills and the experience in vSphere administration to know about the different metrics and the details, what these metrics mean.
And I would kind of add to that, I think this is more, because you can't save this view, this is more kind of a real-time troubleshooting capability.
Yeah. I mean, you can export the charts. Let's click here.
You can't come back, rebuild it every time.
Yeah, you get the CSV export, and the view is, well, it's based on the historic information and all the metrics and the data that vRealize operations collect. So it sort of all the the settings about the history is the one that VROps which is configured in vRealize operations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so that's a very powerful kind of tool that if you want to, you can give the access to the tenant to select metrics and do their own sort of analysis or troubleshooting
Mm-hmm.
you want to do with it. There was also some other stuff that was collected. Was that in line with tags as well? I just want to make sure that, is there stuff there that you would want to stop them from seeing? So whilst you've got this metric selector at the moment, which has a long list of metrics, is it, could you limit that view and say, right, I only want them to see, I know, the average utilization and IO times?
Yeah, so that is something that you can define now in that manage metrics page in access management, where you define for the different settings, like let's go down to a virtual machine, which of the metrics you want to publish to the tenant or which one you want to hide from the tenant. And again, that sort of is something you figure out typically based on all the knowledge and the skills that your tenants have to actually make use of these metrics, if they have to, or and also of your business model. So one thing that is a very common request, or which differs from based on the business model. Let me see if we can find it very easily here, where we have these CPU ready values. So if you know about vSphere resource management, these CPU ready values define or show how much resources the virtual machine gets compared to what it demands. So it's sort of an indicator of overcommitment. Usually in a environment where you have no overcommitment and each virtual machine gets exactly the resources that it demands, then you have some very low CPU ready values. And we have providers, well, based on the business model, which have that business model, and you can use the different allocation models in Cloud Director to make sure that the environment behaves that way. And then you might want to explicitly publish the CPU ready value to the tenant to sort of prove your business model and that you always get these allocations and the guarantees to the tenant VMs. And then on the other hand, there might be some other business model where you do some overcommitment on the hosts and sort of calculate in the risk of performance contention as a provider. And in this case, you might explicitly want to hide the CPU ready value from the tenant, as an example. And that, of course, goes down to, well, all the different detailed settings that we have here as well.
Yeah, so there needs to be, so the advice here is actually there needs to be some consideration and some knowledge to understand what these things are, because someone looks at ready PCT, you know, even a provider admin might not know what that particular variable is. But like you say, if you have then an administrator in your customer who knows their stuff, then you could be exposing yourself. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And typically what we have seen partners do is they start with, let me disable all metrics and let me expose only the metrics. So typically they go the other way around. Is first disable and then enable only those ones which they understand or which they explicitly want their tenants to see.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, and this will obviously affect then, these metrics are not just for that metric selector. These will then affect what they see in a dashboard, or is that going to build itself out, whatever those metrics are always going to be made available?
Now, the dashboards are independent of this because dashboards typically pick up the least disruptive metrics to bring out. It's mostly about how is it being utilized and things like that, the bare minimum basic common metrics. The metric selector is completely independent.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and just when we were back there, you're going to notice that, well, two questions. One was, is this tunable per tenant, or is this another global setting? And secondly, that price setting tag, is that, what does that actually do?
So it is not pertinent to answer your first question. It is a global setting. So you are deciding your business model as a provider as a whole and not pertinent, at least as of now. That's how the feature is.
Yep.
With respect to that top setting, right, show price values to tenants, it correlates back to one of the things York said earlier. There may be certain providers who are using Tenant App as a metering system and not a billing system as such. So in such case, you do not want the dollar numbers to appear anywhere in the dashboards, in the metric selector, in the bills, nowhere, right? So in such cases, you would enable this, disable this show price values to tenants, and dollar values would disappear from everywhere.
Got it. Okay, so at the moment, I can't remember if we actually saw any dollar values in your dashboards.
Switching over again to the tenant view, I think we saw that.
Oh yeah, total cost.
Yeah. There's some total cost here in the overview settings, and I think in some of the other dashboards as well, where it shows up with the total cost, and that would be hidden or shown based on the setting.
Okay, got it. Okay, so that pretty much covers all of the access management and conditioning around the dashboards. Is there anything else there that we need to cover while we're here?
I think for the metrics, again, we covered pretty much the capabilities that the Tenant App currently has, and got some insights on the roadmap. One thing that I want to mention as well, since I'm not sure if we discussed that in past, is the reports section. So as a provider administrator, you can use in the provider portal of the Tenant App the report section to generate and even schedule the out-of-the-box defined reports that come with the Cloud Director management pack for vRealize. And this functionality, Data, please correct me if I'm wrong here, also comes with the vRealize chargeback license that's included in FlexCore. So this allows you, So this allows you to create reports either for your own utilization or to create some reports that you want to reuse or massage a bit, use to send out certain information for to the tenant afterwards. And that is some functionality and some value add that you get as a provider, to use these reports that come defined with the management pack in vRealize.
And these reports are generated in vRealize and then published here in the generated reports tab at the top, or do you have to go somewhere else to get them?
No, that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So as a provider, then I can. Oh yeah, okay. Let's have a quick look at one.
Yeah. Not sure how long that takes. Where you can select an object. Let's see. The distribution report was, I think, an organization. You have to select the right object here, and then it's going to be created, which will take some time, and then it shows up here. And then once it's created, you can see the state is still processing, and then you can export it to PDF or to CSV, and then have a look at that, or use it in some further analytics system or whatever you want to do with that information afterwards.
Can you automate the scheduling of these? And I see you've got a schedule button and make it occurring.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same thing. You select the object that you want to have the report on, and then you define the schedule, and then the report gets automatically created and will then eventually show up automatically in the generated reports tab.
Okay. So that's pretty.
That view is like more or less the direct sort of dashboard and UI for the report functionality in vRealize operations that you now get with the FlexCore model.
Yeah, so speaking about vRealize operations, so obviously we've seen here the tenant app for what's available in the tenant app. What can the provider actually do within vRealize operations from a kind of standard perspective versus something that requires an uplift in licensing?
Okay, let me switch over to the vRealize operations UI here. I think we already in some of the other sessions saw about the different, the value that you as a provider get when having access directly to VROps with the advanced licenses. We have the view for the environment. You get the details of the relationship between the different objects in Cloud Director, and of course you can also view the dashboards that come out of the box with the Cloud Director and Management Pack. So these are also the ones that we've seen are published in the Tenant app, and the same not only for the dashboards but also for the reports. But of course, if you have a VROps advanced license and you get access to the VROps UI as a provider, you can not only use that stuff and all the different alerts and things that come out of the box, but you can define your own reports, dashboards, alerts, environmental metrics, the different views that you have. And this is a very powerful add-on because, again, for two different scenarios. First of all, it helps directly you as a provider for your day-to-day operations, because depending, for example, on the different support team structure that you have, you could create different views for a first-level support where they get some high-level metrics about the different things that are running in the in Cloud Director, the workloads that they need to know, information that they need to know when they are directly on the call with the customer. While for second, third level support, you might have some more detailed view with more metrics and more information shown, but also needs more skills for that. Yeah. So that's something where you can get a lot of value out of VROps just for your day-to-day operation to be more efficient in your operation of the public cloud environment, the Cloud Director environment. And the other thing is that, of course, that goes more into the direction of a managed service. Since, you can create custom dashboards, you can create custom reports, custom alerts, and so on. That is something where you can work with your tenant to create really some custom dashboards that are sort of catered for the tenant workloads, where you work together with the tenant and then create some reports that is defined based on their needs and based on the applications and the workloads that they run in their org VDCs.
Yeah, I guess there's a huge market in that type of analytics as well. What the service provider can, I guess, interpret from the reports as an extra value add as well with the experience they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So speaking from a roadmap standpoint, right? Today, you with 2.4, you cannot expose reports to your tenants. That's something that we are adding on the roadmap to. Just like you can customize dashboards and expose custom dashboards to your tenants in future releases, you will be able to create custom report templates and decide which of those report templates should be visible to your tenants as well. So that's something upcoming.
Mm-hmm. I mean, currently, the the thing that are on the roadmap is to see and publish these dashboards directly into the Tenant app, and therefore directly into the tenant portal, so that these dashboards and reports show up here in a self-service fashion for the Cloud Director tenant. However, already right now, of course, you as a provider can do that as a managed service. So you create the dashboard in vRealize, and then you can use, for example, I'm just selecting one here out of context, but you can create you can use the dashboard sharing functionality that comes with vRealize, where you can create a unique link to a unique URL to just this dashboard, and then just make sure reverse proxy or some other sort of way that a tenant can access that, and then they just see this dashboard for the expiration time that you defined here, without the need to log into vRealize operations. So that's a very powerful way, again, for some rather managed service where you create for your tenant a single dashboard or a set of dashboards, and then just give them access through the URL here. Or of course, you can just export the dashboards, export reports, run them every day, every week, and for example, just send them out via email to the tenant administrator.
And that email, sorry, that's a really good feature. I didn't realize you could do that. So there was an email link as well. Can you schedule a report to be emailed then to a customer as a part of a managed service?
Yeah, in this case, well, for this one, that's just the dashboard sharing. So it just shares the URL. But for the reports, you can define and use all the vRealize capabilities to define reports and then run them scheduled and automatically send them out.
Cool.
And that is something that we actually have some providers doing that. So some, for example, for using, well, the thing is that you get, with that, you get all the power that comes with vRealize operations. So for example, some compliance reports that comes out of the box with vRealize functionality, where you can some value add for your tenant when you create these compliance reports for your tenant. Or another thing, since we have a pretty good ecosystem for vRealize for different management packs, for example, we have some third-party management packs for certain workloads like SAP applications or finance or healthcare applications. And then you can, as a provider, use these management packs, create the dashboards for exactly the workloads that your tenants run, and then provide some value add, because you can give the tenant access and information about their actual workloads and the applications they run on your cloud, and gives them some insights that they otherwise might not get when they go to some public other hyperscaler offering or something like that.
Jörg, I'm thinking we need probably another Feature Fridays to go into this area, because there's a lot of, well, I mean, being serious, there's a lot of real good value here that I think we could explore and understand more about, what's out of the box of vRealize operations, what licensing type effects, what you can see and what you can do, because I know a lot of service providers use vRealize operations. I would love to see more of them doing this type of managed service value adds, reporting, dashboards, and reports as a service. All right, great. Well, listen, guys, I think that's a fantastic overview of the Tenant App dashboards, the control they have over Tenant App dashboards, and the type of value that a service provider could provide today with Tenant App and with vRealize operations from a core Flex licensing perspective. So thank you very much again, Jörg, for setting up the demos and talking us through that, and Data as well. Thank you for being online and helping us out with the roadmap and understanding the functionality where Tenant App is today and where it's going. Cheers, guys.
Sure.